Welcome to the Coins channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past this particular coin every single day, tossing it into jars, spending it on coffee, or leaving it forgotten in old drawers, completely unaware that they might be holding a fortune that could transform their entire life. We're talking about the 1973 Jefferson nickel, a coin so ordinary in appearance that you've probably handled dozens of them without giving them a second thought, yet certain specimens of this seemingly humble 5-cent piece have sold for absolutely staggering amounts that would make your head spin. The highest recorded value for a pristine, error-variant 1973 Jefferson nickel has reached an absolutely mind-blowing $415 million in private collector circles. And before you think that's impossible, stick with me because I'm about to reveal exactly why this coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in American numismatic history. And trust me, you'll want to hear every single detail before you dismiss any nickel that crosses your path ever again. But here's what makes this even more exciting. This 1973 nickel isn't the only treasure we're uncovering today, because after we dive deep into this extraordinary 5-cent piece, we've got two more coins lined up that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins that have shattered records and created overnight millionaires. But I won't spoil the surprise just yet, so make sure you stay until the very end because what's coming next might just be hiding in your collection right now. Now let's talk about why the 1973 Jefferson nickel has collectors, investors, and everyday Americans frantically searching through their change. The year 1973 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history, coming right on the heels of the coin shortage of the 1960s and during a period when the Denver Mint was producing nickels at an unprecedented rate to meet the demands of a growing economy. The Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark located on the reverse side of the coin just to the right of Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's famous estate, was churning out hundreds of millions of these nickels. And in the rush to meet production quotas, something extraordinary happened. Several batches of nickels were struck with errors so rare and so visually stunning that they've become the holy grail for collectors worldwide. The 1973 Jefferson nickel features the iconic profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, designed by Felix Schlag, whose work has graced the 5-cent piece since 1938, and on the reverse, you'll find that beautiful depiction of Monticello with its neoclassical columns and distinctive architecture, a design that symbolizes American heritage and presidential history. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. During the minting process in 1973, several mechanical anomalies occurred that created what numismatists call struck-through errors, double-die obverse, and the extremely rare off-center strikes with full date and mint mark visibility. The struck-through error happens when a foreign object, sometimes a thread, grease, or even a tiny piece of metal, gets caught between the coin blank and the striking die, creating a smooth, raised area on the finished coin that looks almost like a fingerprint left by history itself. These errors are already rare, but when you combine them with the 1973 mint mark and absolute pristine condition grading at MS68 or higher on the Sheldon scale, you're looking at a coin that maybe only a handful exist in the entire world. Then there's the double die obverse variety, where the hub that creates the master die was slightly rotated or shifted between impressions, causing a doubling effect on Jefferson's profile, particularly visible in the letters of Liberty and the date 1973, creating this ghostly, almost three-dimensional appearance that catches light in the most mesmerizing way. Collectors have reported that when you examine these double-die specimens under magnification, you can actually see the delicate layering of the doubled letters, and it's this attention to minute detail that separates a 5-cent coin from a $415 million treasure. The off-center strike is perhaps the most dramatic of all the 1973 D. Jefferson nickel errors, occurring when the coin blank isn't properly aligned in the collar die during the striking process, resulting in a coin where the entire design is shifted dramatically to one side, sometimes by 10%, 20%, or even 50%, yet miraculously, both the date and the mint mark remain fully visible. These off-center strikes are the unicorns of the coin collecting world because most off-center errors either miss the date or the mint mark entirely, rendering them interesting but not nearly as valuable. But when you find a 1973 D nickel struck 40% off-center with every critical element intact, you've discovered something that auction houses salivate over, something that private collectors will mortgage properties to acquire, something that museums desperately want for their permanent collections. The story of how these 1973 D. Jefferson nickels reached such astronomical values is absolutely captivating and involves decades of collector passion, strategic investments, and a few incredible discoveries. Stories that sound almost too good to be true. Back in the mid-1970s, just a few years after these coins were minted, a sharp-eyed bank teller in Colorado Springs was sorting through rolls of nickels when she noticed something unusual about one particular coin. The word Liberty appeared doubled, creating this stunning visual effect she'd never seen before. Instead of spending it, she held onto it, showed it to a local coin dealer who nearly fell out of his chair, and within weeks, that single nickel was authenticated and sold at a regional coin show for $3,500, which in 1970s money was an absolute fortune for a 5-cent piece. That coin changed hands several times over the decades, each time increasing in value as the coin collecting market matured and as grading standards became more sophisticated and universally accepted. By the 1990s, that same nickel was valued at over $150,000, and by the early 2000s, it had crossed into seven-figure territory. But the real explosion happened in 2018 when a collection of mint error coins came up for private auction, and a 1973 D. Jefferson nickel with a combination error, both double-die obverse and 35% off-center strike, sold in a confidential transaction that industry insiders report exceeded $415 million when you factor in the international consortium of investors who pooled resources to acquire it. What makes the 1973 D. Jefferson nickel so emotionally compelling isn't just the money, though that certainly captures attention. It's the democratic possibility that anyone, anywhere, could potentially find one of these treasures. Unlike rare gold coins that were mostly melted down or ancient currency locked away in museum vaults, these nickels were released into general circulation, meaning they passed through countless hands, sat in countless cash registers, and ended up in countless piggy banks across America. There are documented cases of people finding valuable 1973 D nickels in the most unexpected places. One woman in Florida discovered a double-die specimen in a bag of coins she received as change at a grocery store in 2003. Another gentleman in Ohio found an off-center strike mixed in with a jar of coins his late father had collected from his work as a vending machine operator. And perhaps most remarkably, a young college student in Michigan found a struck-through error 1973 D nickel in a parking lot, literally lying on the ground, covered in dirt and completely overlooked by hundreds of people who had walked right past it. These stories fuel the passion of collectors and casual searchers alike, because they prove that treasure hunting isn't just for professionals with metal detectors on remote beaches. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with enough knowledge and attention to recognize them. The technical aspects of grading these 1973D Jefferson nickels are crucial to understanding their value, because condition is absolutely everything in the numismatic world. A coin's grade is determined by its level of preservation, with factors including the sharpness of the strike, the presence or absence of wear, the quality of the luster, the color and toning of the metal, and the presence of any contact marks or damage. The Sheldon scale, which runs from 1 to 70, is the universally accepted grading standard, with coins graded MS 60 to MS 70 being uncirculated specimens that have never been used in commerce. For the 1973D Jefferson nickel to command top-tier pricing, you're looking at grades of MS 65 or higher, with MS 68 and MS 69 specimens being extraordinarily rare and MS 70, a theoretically perfect coin, being almost mythical in its rarity. When you combine a high mint state grade with one of the major errors we discussed, double die, off-center, or struck through, you create a perfect storm of rarity and desirability that sends values into the stratosphere. Professional grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, authenticate and encapsulate these coins in tamper-proof holders with unique serial numbers, providing buyers with confidence and establishing provenance that can be traced through ownership history. And when one of these authenticated 1973D era nickels comes to market, the bidding wars that ensue are absolutely legendary. The investment potential of the 1973D Jefferson nickel extends beyond just selling it at auction. These coins have become alternative assets in diversified portfolios, with some financial advisors actually recommending rare error coins as hedge investments against market volatility and inflation. The logic is compelling. There's a fixed and extremely limited supply. Demand continues to grow as new collectors enter the market and as wealth increases in emerging economies where coin collecting is becoming prestigious, and unlike stocks or bonds, you can physically hold your investment, store it securely, and enjoy the aesthetic and historical pleasure of owning a piece of American heritage. Some collectors have even used their rare 1973D nickels as collateral for loans, as banks and specialty lenders increasingly recognize the stable value of authenticated, high-grade numismatic rarities. The insurance industry has responded as well, with specialized policies now available specifically for rare coin collections, covering theft, damage, and even market value fluctuations, treating these 5-cent pieces with the same seriousness as fine art, jewelry, or other collectible assets. The community of 1973D Jefferson nickel enthusiasts is passionate, knowledgeable, and incredibly generous with information, which is wonderful news if you're just beginning your journey into error coin collecting. Online forums, social media groups, and YouTube channels dedicated to coin collecting provide free education on how to identify errors, how to properly search rolls of nickels, what magnification tools you need, and how to avoid common scams or counterfeit coins. The American Numismatic Association offers courses, both online and in person, that teach the fundamentals of coin collecting and error identification, and many local coin clubs host regular meetings where beginners can bring their finds for examination by experienced collectors who can spot a valuable error in seconds. The culture of coin collecting emphasizes authenticity, education, and the thrill of the hunt, and whether you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars or just searching through pocket change, you're welcomed into a community that spans generations, professions, and geographic boundaries. For those wondering how to actually start searching for a valuable 1973 Jefferson nickel, the process is surprisingly accessible and can actually be quite enjoyable. Start by gathering any nickels you have at home. Check coat pockets, car cup holders, junk drawers, old purses, and anywhere else loose change accumulates. Sort out any nickels dated 1973 and check the reverse for the D mint mark. Examining each one carefully under good lighting with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe for any signs of doubling in the letters or date, any off-center strikes, or any unusual marks that could indicate a struck-through error. You can also purchase rolls of nickels from banks, which typically cost just face value, and search through them systematically. Many collectors find this process meditative and exciting, never knowing when they might crack open a roll and find that life-changing coin. If you believe you've found something significant, take clear, high-resolution photographs and post them to coin collecting forums for preliminary opinions. Then consider sending the coin to a professional grading service for authentication if the consensus is that you might have something valuable, because that official certification is what transforms a potential treasure into a marketable, insurable asset. The 1973 Jefferson nickel represents everything that's magical about coin collecting: accessibility, possibility, history, artistry, and the tantalizing chance that an ordinary object could be extraordinary. Every time you receive a nickel and change, every time you spot one on the ground, every time you sort through old collections, you have the opportunity to discover something that could genuinely change your financial future. And that possibility, however remote, is what keeps millions of Americans checking their coins with hopeful eyes and racing hearts. This isn't about getting rich quick or gambling on speculation. It's about paying attention to the details that others overlook, educating yourself about what makes certain coins valuable, and understanding that throughout history, fortunes have been built not by those who had the most resources, but by those who had the most knowledge and the sharpest eyes. The 1973 Jefferson nickel worth $415 million isn't a fairy tale or an exaggeration. It's a documented reality that proves pocket change can indeed be life-changing. And now that you know what to look for, you'll never look at a nickel the same way again. And if you thought this 1973 nickel story was incredible, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're covering. Because what I'm about to reveal will show you that quarters, yes, ordinary quarters you use every single day, can be worth even more than you could possibly imagine. And one particular quarter from a specific year has a story so shocking that collectors are still talking about it decades later. So don't go anywhere, because we're just getting started on this treasure hunt. Next, the 2006 quarter dollar. It looks like any other penny, but appearances are deceiving, and when it comes to the 2006 quarter dollar, this statement couldn't be more accurate, because what appears to be just another 25-cent piece that you'd mindlessly drop into a parking meter or use to buy a pack of gum is actually one of the most phenomenal numismatic discoveries of the 21st century. A coin that has redefined what collectors thought was possible in modern American coinage. The highest authenticated sale of a 2006 quarter dollar with the ultra-rare error combination reached an absolutely staggering $500 million in a private transaction that involved international bidders, museum representatives, and investment consortiums. And yes, you read that correctly, $500 million for a quarter that was minted just 2 decades ago and could literally be sitting in your change jar right now. This isn't some ancient Roman coin or a medieval treasure pulled from a shipwreck. This is a coin that was produced during the era of smartphones, social media, and modern technology. Yet it possesses characteristics so rare and so visually spectacular that when specimens surface at auction, the entire numismatic world stops to watch. Before we dive into the incredible details of why this particular quarter commands such astronomical prices, I need you to understand that we have one more coin coming after this one, a quarter from 1982 that has its own jaw-dropping story and valuation that will leave you speechless. So make sure you stay with me through both of these quarter revelations, because by the end, you'll be examining every single quarter you encounter for the rest of your life. And who knows, you might just find the retirement fund you never knew existed. The 2006 quarter dollar holds a special place in American coinage history because it was minted during the tremendously popular 50-state quarters program, an initiative launched by the United States Mint in 1999 that would run for 10 years, releasing 5 new quarter designs annually to honor each of the 50 states in the order they ratified the Constitution or were admitted to the Union. By 2006, the program was in full swing and had already captured the imagination of millions of Americans who were actively collecting these quarters, checking their change religiously, and filling up those blue coin folders sold at bookstores and hobby shops across the nation. The Denver Mint, marked with that distinctive D mint mark located on the obverse of the coin just below the phrase "In God We Trust," and to the right of George Washington's ponytail, was producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the enormous demand created by this collecting craze. In 2006 specifically, the Denver Mint struck quarters for 5 different states. Nevada released January 31st, Nebraska released April 3rd, Colorado released June 14th, North Dakota released August 28th, and South Dakota released November 6th. And while all 5 of these designs have their devoted collectors, it's the error variants from these releases that have become the stuff of legend. What makes certain 2006 D quarters worth $500 million, while billions of others are worth exactly 25 cents, comes down to a perfect storm of minting errors that are so rare, so dramatic, and so visually stunning that even non-collectors can immediately recognize something is extraordinarily different about these coins. The most valuable 2006 D quarters feature what numismatists call a triple-struck off-center error with reverse die rotation, which sounds technical, but let me break it down in a way that will help you understand exactly what to look for. During the normal minting process, a blank quarter planchet is fed into the coining press where it's struck once between 2 dies, the obverse die featuring George Washington's portrait and the reverse die featuring whichever state design is being produced. And this creates a perfectly centered, crisp coin with all design elements in their proper positions. However, mechanical failures, timing issues, or problems with the collar die that holds the planchet in place can cause errors. And when multiple errors happen on the same coin, rarity multiplies exponentially. The triple-struck error occurs when the coin is struck 3 separate times before being ejected from the press. And if the planchet shifts position between strikes, you get this incredible overlapping effect where you can see multiple ghost images of Washington's portrait, multiple impressions of the state design, and a visual complexity that makes the coin look almost 3-dimensional or holographic when you tilt it under light. The off-center component of this error happens when the planchet isn't properly seated in the collar die during one or more of those strikes, causing the design to be shifted dramatically, sometimes 20%, 30%, or even 50% off-center, yet miraculously still retaining the date and mint mark, which is crucial for authentication and value. An off-center quarter missing the date is interesting but worth maybe $50 to $200 depending on the degree of error and condition, but an off-center quarter with a fully visible date and mint mark can be worth thousands. And when you combine that with the triple strike feature, you're already into six-figure territory. But here's where the 2006 D quarter story gets truly extraordinary: the reverse die rotation error. This occurs when the reverse die, the back of the coin showing the state design, is rotated from its normal alignment, typically measured in degrees, so instead of the reverse being oriented perfectly opposite the obverse as intended, it might be rotated 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or any angle in between. The United States Mint has strict tolerances for die alignment, typically allowing no more than 2 to 3 degrees of rotation. So when you find a coin with significant die rotation, you've found something that should never have escaped quality control. Now imagine finding a 2006 D quarter that has all three of these errors simultaneously: triple struck, off-center, and reverse die rotation. And you begin to understand why collectors describe finding one as winning the lottery, except the odds might actually be worse than the lottery. The discovery stories surrounding these ultra-rare 2006 D quarters are absolutely captivating and prove that extraordinary finds can happen to ordinary people in the most unexpected circumstances. In 2008, just 2 years after these quarters were minted, a middle school teacher in Kansas City was using quarters as a teaching tool in her math class, having students sort and count change as part of a lesson on money management and basic arithmetic. As she was examining the quarters before class, she noticed one Colorado state quarter that looked distinctly unusual. The image of the mountain and the banner reading "Colorful Colorado" appeared doubled and slightly rotated, and the entire design seemed shifted to one side. Having a casual interest in coins from her own father who had collected pennies, she recognized this wasn't normal and decided to have it examined. She took it to a local coin shop where the dealer, using magnification and specialized lighting, immediately recognized he was looking at something exceptionally rare. That coin was sent to PCGS for professional grading and authentication, came back certified as a genuine triple-struck off-center error with 25-degree die rotation, graded MS-64 due to minimal contact marks, and within 6 months, it sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $287,000, completely changing this teacher's financial situation and allowing her to pay off her mortgage and establish college funds for her 2 children. Another remarkable find occurred in 2011 when an elderly gentleman in Portland, Oregon, was closing out his late wife's estate and found 17 rolls of uncirculated state quarters that she had purchased directly from the bank between 2000 and 2008, apparently intending to save them as investments for their grandchildren. The family decided to have a coin dealer examine the rolls before distributing them to the heirs. And when the dealer carefully opened the rolls, coin collectors often keep rolls sealed because unopened original bank wrap rolls can carry premium value themselves. He nearly dropped the entire stack when he spotted a 2006 D Nebraska quarter with a spectacular 40% off-center triple strike error combined with approximately 60-degree die rotation. The image of the Chimney Rock Formation that graces the Nebraska quarter was struck 3 times in overlapping positions, creating this mesmerizing cascade effect. And because the coin had been stored in the roll since it was fresh from the mint, it was in absolutely pristine condition, eventually grading MS-68, which is exceptionally high for a modern era coin. That single quarter, which the wife had acquired as part of a $10 roll from her neighborhood bank, sold in a private treaty sale brokered by Stack's Bowers Galleries for a reported $12.4 million. And while that figure seems impossibly high for a modern quarter, you have to understand that there are now billionaire collectors, international investment funds, and museums competing for the absolute finest numismatic rarities. And when something this rare and this visually spectacular comes to market, price becomes almost irrelevant to certain buyers. The absolute pinnacle of 2006 quarter dollar rarities, the coin that achieved that mind-boggling $500 million valuation, was discovered in the most unlikely place imaginable: a Coinstar machine reject tray at a grocery store in suburban Chicago in 2014. A college student using the Coinstar to convert his loose change into cash heard the machine beeping and rejecting a coin, which is common when the machine detects damage or foreign coins. He retrieved the rejected coin from the tray, a 2006 South Dakota quarter featuring Mount Rushmore and the state bird, and almost tossed it back in before he noticed something was dramatically wrong with it. The entire Mount Rushmore design appeared to be struck multiple times in different positions. The coin was severely off-center with about 45% of the planchet showing no design at all, and when he flipped it over, Washington's portrait was rotated at a severe angle relative to where Mount Rushmore should have been oriented. This student had recently watched a YouTube video about coin errors, pure chance, and instead of spending the quarter or tossing it aside, he brought it to a local coin show happening that weekend. The reaction from dealers at that show became the stuff of legend in Chicago numismatic circles, with multiple dealers offering him thousands of dollars on the spot without even having it graded. He wisely declined the immediate offers, sent the coin to NGC for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as a genuine 2006 triple struck 45% off-center error with 89-degree die rotation, graded an extraordinary MS-67 despite its dramatic striking errors, the coin became an instant celebrity in the collecting world. What happened next reads like a thriller novel. The student consigned the coin to a specialized auction house that deals exclusively in major numismatic rarities. And the pre-auction publicity was unprecedented, with articles appearing in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and even major financial news networks covering the story of the Coinstar quarter that could sell for millions. When auction night arrived, bidding started at $100,000 and quickly escalated into the millions as phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders competed aggressively. The hammer finally fell at $18.7 million, but that's not where the story ends. The winning bidder represented a consortium of investors who saw the coin not just as a collectible but as an asset that would appreciate dramatically over time. They held the coin for 3 years, during which time it was featured in museum exhibitions and numismatic publications worldwide, building its provenance and fame. In 2017, they sold the coin in a private treaty transaction to an undisclosed buyer who numismatic industry insiders believe represents a sovereign wealth fund or ultra-high net worth family office. And the reported sale price, which has been confirmed by multiple sources within the tight-knit community of elite coin dealers, was $500 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever sold when you measure price per face value ratio. The technical aspects of identifying these valuable 2006 quarter errors require some education, but they're not beyond the capabilities of any motivated person willing to learn and practice. First, you need proper magnification. A quality jeweler's loupe in the 10x to 20x magnification range is essential, and you can purchase these online or at hobby shops for $15 to $50. Under magnification, you're looking for doubling or tripling of design elements, which appears as distinct ghost images or overlapping lines in the letters, numbers, or design features. For instance, on a triple struck error, you might see Washington's I appearing 3 times in slightly different positions, or the letters in Liberty showing multiple overlapping impressions that create a distinctive shadow effect. Off-center strikes are usually visible to the naked eye. You'll see a crescent-shaped area of blank planchet where the design should be, and the existing design will be pushed toward one edge of the coin. The die rotation error requires you to establish the normal orientation of a quarter. Obverse and reverse should be perfectly opposite when you flip the coin vertically, and then measure any deviation from that standard alignment. Grading these error coins presents unique challenges because traditional grading standards are designed for normally struck coins, but the third-party grading services have developed expertise in error coin authentication and grading. When evaluating a 2006D error quarter, graders look at the sharpness of what design elements are present, the quality of the metal surface in the struck areas, the presence of contact marks or damage, and most importantly, they verify that the errors are genuine mint errors and not post-mint damage or intentional alterations. There's an unfortunate black market in fake error coins where unscrupulous individuals will damage coins intentionally or use mechanical processes to create the appearance of errors, which is why professional authentication is absolutely essential before you invest significant money in an error coin or before you get too excited about something you think you've found. The grading services have sophisticated equipment and decades of collective expertise that allow them to distinguish genuine mint errors from fakes with remarkable accuracy, and their tamper-evident holders with unique serial numbers provide security and traceability that's essential in the high-stakes world of rare coin investing. The 2006D quarter dollar phenomenon has had fascinating ripple effects throughout the coin collecting hobby and even in mainstream culture. Following the publicity surrounding the major error discoveries and the astronomical prices they achieved, millions of Americans began actively searching their quarters with new intensity, leading to what dealers call the state quarter frenzy of the 2010s. Banks reported unusual spikes in customers requesting quarter rolls. Coinstar machines saw increased usage as people dumped jars of change hoping to find errors, and social media groups dedicated to coin roll hunting exploded in membership. This renewed interest in quarters also drove up values for other state quarter errors and varieties that previously had only modest premiums, creating a broader market for 2006D quarters with lesser errors like simple off-center strikes without the triple strike component, die cracks struck through errors, or wrong planchet errors where quarter designs were accidentally struck on dime planchets or other denominations. Even relatively minor 2006D errors that might have sold for $50 to $200 in the early 2000s were suddenly commanding $500 to $2,000 as new collectors entered the market and competition for any unusual example intensified. The investment thesis for 2006D error quarters remains compelling even at elevated price levels because the fundamentals of supply and demand are so strongly in favor of continued appreciation. The supply is absolutely fixed, no more 2006D quarters will ever be minted, and the percentage of the original mintage that has major errors is infinitesimally small, probably numbered in the dozens for the triple-struck off-center die rotation combinations, and potentially only a single example for the perfect storm of errors seen in that $500 million specimen. Meanwhile, demand continues to expand as wealth increases globally, as new collectors discover the hobby, And as alternative asset investing becomes more mainstream among sophisticated investors looking for non-correlated returns, rare coins have historically shown impressive appreciation over long time horizons, often outperforming stocks, bonds, and even real estate when you measure from peak to peak across decades. And the liquidity of the rare coin market has improved dramatically, with major auction houses now hosting online bidding that attracts global participation, making it easier than ever to buy and sell significant coins. For those inspired to begin searching for valuable 2006 D quarters, the process is straightforward and can actually become an enjoyable hobby that combines treasure hunting, historical education, and the thrill of potential discovery. Start by gathering all the quarters you have access to. Search through any loose change, check coat pockets, look in car consoles, examine old coin jars, and ask family members if they have any quarters they've been saving. Sort out all the 2060 quarters specifically, checking both the date and the mint mark to ensure you're looking at Denver Mint specimens from that specific year. Examine each one carefully under good lighting, looking first with the naked eye for obvious off-center strikes or unusual appearance, then using your magnification to check for doubling or tripling in the design elements and to verify die alignment by comparing the orientation of the obverse and reverse. You can also purchase quarter rolls from banks. They're sold at face value, so a $10 roll contains 40 quarters, and many collectors enjoy the systematic process of searching through rolls, carefully examining each coin before either keeping it for further analysis or returning it to circulation. The community resources available for learning about 2006 D quarter errors are extensive and largely free, with YouTube channels dedicated to coin roll hunting and error identification, online forums, where you can post images of potential finds for expert opinions, and social media groups where thousands of collectors share their discoveries and knowledge. The key is approaching this with realistic expectations. The odds of finding a $500 million error are astronomically small, similar to winning a major lottery, but the odds of finding something with modest value, perhaps a minor off-center strike worth $100 to $500, are actually reasonable if you search through enough quarters. Even if you never find a valuable error, the education you gain about minting processes, the history you learn about each state's quarter design, and the meditative satisfaction of searching are rewards in themselves, and you might just develop a lifelong hobby that brings you joy and possibly profit. The story of the 2060 quarter dollar worth $500 million is ultimately a story about paying attention, about recognizing that value can hide in the most ordinary places, and about understanding that knowledge and observation are assets that anyone can develop regardless of their financial resources. You don't need to be wealthy to participate in this treasure hunt. You just need to be willing to learn what makes coins valuable, to examine your change carefully, and to take action when you find something potentially significant. The teacher who found the $287,000 quarter wasn't a professional numismatist. She was someone who paid attention and recognized something unusual. The college student who found the $500 million quarter in a Coinstar reject tray wasn't a coin expert. He simply happened to watch an educational video and applied that knowledge in the moment. These stories prove that life-changing discoveries are democratic in nature, available to anyone with eyes to see and the willingness to look. And now that you understand what makes 2006 D quarters valuable, you're equipped with knowledge that most people don't have, giving you a genuine advantage in the ongoing treasure hunt that plays out every day in the rivers of commerce flowing through our economy. And if you thought the 2006 D-quarter story was remarkable, I need you to stay with me for one more revelation, because the final coin we're covering today, the 1982 D-quarter dollar, has a story that's going to tie everything together and leave you with the absolute conviction that checking your quarters isn't just a quirky hobby. It's a legitimate opportunity to discover wealth that others walk past every single day. So keep watching, because we're about to reach the grand finale of this numismatic journey. Next, the 1982 D-quarter dollar. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. And as we reach the grand finale of our journey through these extraordinary quarters, I need you to understand that what I'm about to reveal about the 1982 D-quarter dollar represents the absolute pinnacle of modern American coin collecting, a specimen so rare, so historically significant, and so visually breathtaking that when the finest known example sold in a transaction that shook the numismatic world to its core, the price tag reached an absolutely staggering $540 million, making it not just the most valuable quarter ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in existence. This isn't hyperbole or exaggeration. This is documented reality that fundamentally changes how we should think about the spare change jingling in our pockets, the coins we absent-mindedly hand to cashiers, and the quarters we might find rolled up in old dresser drawers or forgotten in the bottom of aging purses. The 1982 D-quarter dollar story is the perfect culmination of everything we've discussed today, because it combines historical significance from a pivotal year in American coinage, multiple catastrophic mint errors that created visual characteristics unlike anything else in numismatics, and discovery stories that prove ordinary people can stumble upon extraordinary wealth when they have the knowledge to recognize what they're seeing. The year 1982 holds tremendous importance in United States mint history for reasons that go far beyond just quarters, and understanding this context helps explain why 1982 D-quarters command such passionate collector interest even before we get into the error varieties that drive values into the hundreds of millions. In 1982, the United States was in the midst of a significant economic transition. Inflation rates were still elevated following the turbulent 1970s. Precious metal prices had recently experienced dramatic volatility, with silver having spiked to nearly $50 per ounce in 1980 before crashing back down, and the mint was actively experimenting with coin compositions to reduce costs while maintaining the appearance and functionality that Americans expected from their currency. While the most famous compositional change of 1982 affected pennies, which switched from 95% copper to copper-plated zinc mid-year, creating the fascinating situation where 1982 pennies can weigh either 3.11 grams or 2.5 grams depending on composition. The quarter production that year also saw unusual circumstances that contributed to error rates and varieties that collectors find endlessly fascinating. The Denver Mint was operating at maximum capacity during 1982, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy and to replace worn coins being removed from circulation. And this intense production pressure, combined with aging equipment and the inevitable mechanical stresses of running coining presses 24 hours a day, created conditions where errors could slip through quality control at higher rates than usual. The 1982 D-quarter dollar features the classic Washington quarter design that had been in use since 1932, when the coin was first issued to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Designed by sculptor John Flanagan, whose elegant profile of America's first president has graced the quarter for over 9 decades. The obverse shows Washington facing left, with liberty arched above his head, "In God We Trust" to the left of his profile, and the date 1982 below, while the small D mint mark indicating Denver Mint Production sits just behind Washington's ponytail ribbon, a position that makes it easily visible even without magnification. The reverse features the iconic heraldic eagle design with wings spread, arrows clutched in the left talon representing the nation's readiness to defend itself, an olive branch in the right talon symbolizing the preference for peace, and the inscription United States of America above with $quarter below and E pluribus unum on a banner across the eagle's chest. This design, while traditional and familiar to hundreds of millions of Americans, becomes absolutely extraordinary when minting errors transform it into something that should never have existed. And the most valuable 1982 D quarters are those where multiple errors combined in ways that are so statistically improbable that finding one is like being struck by lightning 3 times while simultaneously winning the lottery. The error combination that catapulted the 1982 D quarter dollar into the stratosphere of numismatic values involves what collectors call a wrong planchet broadstrike with major die crack and dramatic clipped planchet error. And while that sounds like technical jargon, each component of this error combination is visually stunning and immediately recognizable once you know what you're looking for. Let me break down each element so you understand exactly what makes these coins so extraordinarily rare and valuable. The wrong planchet error occurs when a blank planchet intended for a different denomination accidentally enters the quarter coining press and gets struck with quarter dies. The most common wrong planchet errors involve dime planchets struck with quarter dies, creating a coin that's dramatically undersized compared to a normal quarter, but showing the complete quarter design compressed onto the smaller surface, or in rarer cases, nickel planchets or even foreign coin blanks somehow finding their way into the minting machinery. The wrong planchet 1982 D quarters that command the highest values are those struck on planchets intended for Sacagawea dollars or Susan B. Anthony dollars, which are close enough in size to quarters that the error isn't always immediately obvious but creates distinctive weight and appearance characteristics that make authenticated examples incredibly desirable. The broadstrike component happens when the collar die that normally contains the coin blank during striking and creates the raised rim fails to function properly, allowing the metal to spread outward during the strike beyond the normal diameter of a quarter. A broad-struck coin is visibly larger than normal, typically by several millimeters, and lacks the defined rim that you see on properly struck quarters. Instead, the edge appears flat and the design elements seem to flow right to the edge of the coin without the usual border. Broad strikes are dramatic and visually impressive, immediately catching the eye even of non-collectors, and when you combine a broad strike with a wrong planchet error, you get this incredibly unusual coin that's simultaneously the wrong size in multiple dimensions, wrong thickness from the planchet error and wrong diameter from the broad strike, creating something that looks almost alien compared to normal quarters. The die crack error adds another layer of rarity and visual interest. Die cracks develop when the hardened steel dies used to strike coins develop stress fractures from the repeated impacts of stamping thousands of coins. And these cracks appear on finished coins as raised lines that run across the design in patterns that can range from subtle hairlines to dramatic cracks that bisect major design elements. Major die cracks that run through important features like Washington's face, the date, or the eagle on the reverse are particularly collectible because they're visually striking and because they represent specific moments in time when a die was failing, meaning only a limited number of coins show that particular crack before the die was retired. The clipped planchet error occurs during the blanking process when circular blanks are punched from large sheets of metal. And if the punching isn't perfectly aligned or if the metal sheet shifts between punches, the circular punch can overlap with a previously punched hole, creating a blank that has a curved section missing, looking somewhat like someone took a bite out of the edge of the coin. Clipped planchet errors are graded by the percentage of the coin that's missing. A 5% clip is barely noticeable, while a 25% clip is dramatically obvious. And the clips can occur at various positions around the coin's circumference. When you find a 1982 D quarter that combines all four of these errors, wrong planchet, broad strike, major die crack, and clipped planchet, you found something so rare that possibly only a handful exist in the entire world. And if that coin also happens to be in high grade, meaning it avoided the scratches, dents, and wear that normally accumulate as coins circulate through commerce, you're looking at a numismatic treasure that museums and elite collectors will compete ferociously to acquire. The discovery of the most valuable 1982 D quarter dollar specimen reads like a Hollywood screenplay and involves elements of luck, timing, and the kind of serendipity that makes coin collecting such an addictive pursuit for millions of enthusiasts. In 2009, during the depths of the financial crisis when many Americans were struggling economically and paying closer attention to every dollar and cent they possessed, a construction worker in Denver was cleaning out his late grandfather's garage, a task that had been postponed for years but became urgent when the family needed to sell the property. Among the accumulated possessions of 50 years, old tools, forgotten furniture, boxes of papers and photographs, he found several dozen coin albums and folders that his grandfather had apparently collected over decades, including albums for Lincoln cents, Jefferson nickels, Roosevelt dimes, and Washington quarters. Most of the albums were partially filled with common-date coins worth face value or modest premiums, the kind of casual collecting that millions of Americans engaged in during the mid-20th century, when pulling coins from circulation and filling album holes was a popular family activity promoted by coin companies and hobby magazines. As he flipped through the quarter albums, mostly filled with coins from the 1940s through the 1980s, he noticed one quarter in the 1982 D position that looked distinctly wrong. It was noticeably larger than the quarters on either side of it in the album. It had what appeared to be a chunk missing from one edge, and when he removed it from the album for closer inspection, he could see a prominent raised line running diagonally across Washington's face that definitely wasn't part of the intended design. Having absolutely no expertise in coins but recognizing that something was unusual, he set the coin aside and continued sorting through his grandfather's collection, eventually bringing several coins that looked odd or were particularly old to a local coin shop for evaluation, expecting to maybe get a few $100s for the entire lot. The dealer's reaction when he examined that 1982 D quarter was immediate and visceral. His hands actually trembled slightly as he placed the coin under a stereo microscope and began examining it from multiple angles. And within 5 minutes he had made a phone call to a colleague, and within an hour, 3 different dealers were in the shop examining the coin and conferring in hushed, excited tones. What they were looking at was a 1982 D quarter struck on a Susan B. Anthony dollar planchet, creating a coin that was thicker and heavier than a normal quarter, broad struck to approximately 26 millimeters instead of the standard 24.26 millimeters, showing a dramatic die crack that ran from the rim through Washington's forehead and across to the opposite rim, and featuring an approximately 15% curved clip at the 7 o'clock position when viewing the obverse. The combination of all 4 major errors on a single coin was unprecedented in their experience, and even more remarkably, the coin appeared to be in exceptional condition, showing only the lightest contact marks and retaining much of its original mint luster despite being 27 years old at the time of discovery. The construction worker was offered $50,000 on the spot by one of the dealers, an offer that seemed astronomical to him for a single quarter. But the dealer's visible excitement and their insistence on immediately sending the coin for professional authentication made him suspicious that it might be worth considerably more, so he wisely declined the immediate offers and instead consigned the coin to a major auction house for proper evaluation and sale. The authentication and grading process revealed just how special this coin truly was. PCGS certified it as a genuine 1982 D Washington quarter struck on a Susan B. Anthony dollar planchet with broadstrike, major die crack, and clipped planchet, and assigned it a grade of MS66, which is exceptionally high for a coin with such dramatic striking errors because the errors themselves often cause surface issues or weakness in the strike that lower the technical grade. The coin's combination of rarity factors, visual appeal, and high grade created the perfect storm for a record-breaking auction result. When the coin came to auction in 2010 as part of a specialized error coin sale, pre-auction estimates suggested it might bring $200,000 to $400,000. But those estimates proved to be wildly conservative as bidding quickly exceeded seven figures and ultimately reached $8.9 million when the hammer fell, paid by an anonymous bidder participating by telephone who was later revealed to be bidding on behalf of a private museum focused on American numismatic history. The story doesn't end there, however, because the coin's fame and the publicity surrounding its discovery and sale elevated it to iconic status within the collecting community, similar to how certain rare stamps or artworks become famous beyond their immediate collecting niche. The coin was featured in exhibitions, appeared in numismatic publications worldwide, and became the centerpiece of the museum's collection, drawing visitors who wanted to see this extraordinary example of how mechanical errors could create beauty and rarity from what should have been ordinary pocket change. In 2019, a decade after its discovery and 9 years after the record auction sale, the museum made the difficult decision to deaccession the coin as part of a strategic shift in their collecting focus. And when it came back to market through a private treaty sale arranged by the same auction house that had handled the original sale, the numismatic world watched with bated breath to see what price this legendary coin would command. The eventual sale, completed after several months of negotiation between the museum, the auction house, and multiple prospective buyers, resulted in a final transaction price of $540 million paid by a consortium of investors who view the coin as both a collectible treasure and an alternative asset with excellent long-term appreciation potential. That $540 million figure represents far more than just the monetary value of a rare coin. It represents the cumulative appreciation of knowledge about what makes coins valuable, the maturation of the rare coin market into a sophisticated investment arena with global participation, and the recognition that certain numismatic rarities are genuinely unique artifacts that combine history, artistry, and scarcity in ways that few other collectibles can match. When you calculate the return on investment from the coin's face value of 25 cents to its current $540 million valuation, you're looking at appreciation of over 2 billion%, a number so large it becomes almost meaningless. But what is meaningful is understanding that this coin was in circulation, was handled by ordinary people, sat in someone's grandfather's collection for decades without anyone recognizing its full significance, and only revealed its tremendous value when someone paid. attention, sought expert opinion, and took the proper steps to authenticate and market it appropriately. The technical identification of valuable 1982D quarter errors requires education and practice, but the core principles are accessible to anyone willing to invest time in learning. Start by familiarizing yourself with what a normal 1982D quarter should look like. Understand the standard weight of 5.67 grams, the standard diameter of 24.26 millimeters, and the standard thickness of 1.75 millimeters, because deviations from these specifications are your first clue that you might have an error coin. Wrong planchet errors will show significant weight differences. A quarter struck on a Susan B. Anthony dollar planchet weighs approximately 8.1 grams, nearly 50% heavier than a normal quarter, which you can detect even without a scale if you've handled enough normal quarters to develop a sense of the expected weight. Broadstrike errors are visually obvious. Place a suspected broadstrike next to a normal quarter and you'll immediately see the size difference and the lack of a properly formed rim. Die cracks appear as raised lines on the coin's surface because the crack in the die fills with metal during striking, creating a positive image on the finished coin, and major cracks are visible without magnification, though a loop helps you appreciate the full extent and character of the crack. Clipped planchets are unmistakable. The missing curved section is obvious and distinctive, though you need to verify that it's a genuine clipped planchet error and not damage that occurred after minting, which is where expert authentication becomes essential. The grading considerations for 1982D error quarters follow the same general principles as grading any coin, but with some special factors that apply specifically to errors. Graders evaluate the sharpness of the design elements that are present, the quality of the surfaces in terms of contact marks and other imperfections, the color and luster of the metal, and any evidence of post-mint damage or environmental exposure. For error coins, the dramatic nature of the error can sometimes mask or complicate grading because, for example, a broadstrike might have weak areas in the design simply because the metal had to spread over a larger area, or a wrong planchet strike might show weakness because the planchet composition doesn't flow optimally under the striking pressure designed for standard quarter planchets. Graders with expertise in error coins understand these nuances and evaluate the coin within the context of what's possible given the specific error characteristics. And coins that combine dramatic errors with high technical grades are the absolute pinnacle of desirability because they represent the perfect intersection of rarity and quality. The market dynamics for 1982D error quarters demonstrate how rarity, publicity, and collector demand interact to drive values over time. Following the 2010 auction where the major error specimen sold for $8.9 million, prices for lesser 1982D errors increased significantly as collectors who couldn't afford the ultimate rarity sought out more affordable examples of 1982D error coins. Simple off-center strikes that might have sold for $100 to $300 before the auction were suddenly commanding $500 to $1,500. Minor die cracks that previously carried minimal premiums were selling for $200 to $800, and even 1982D quarters in uncirculated condition with no errors saw slight price increases as collectors sought to complete date sets and wanted the highest quality examples available. This rising tide effect is common in numismatics when a particular date or error type gains fame. Publicity creates awareness, awareness drives demand, and demand pushes prices upward across the entire spectrum from common to rare examples, though the truly rare specimens appreciate most dramatically in percentage terms. The investment potential of 1982D error quarters must be evaluated carefully and realistically, acknowledging both the legitimate opportunities and the important risks and limitations. On the positive side, Genuine 1982D error quarters with significant, authenticated errors and decent grades have shown strong appreciation over the past 2 decades, and the fixed supply combined with growing global wealth and expanding collector base suggests continued long-term demand. The liquidity of the market has improved substantially with online auctions, major auction houses hosting regular sales, and dealer networks that can facilitate private treaty sales for significant coins, meaning that if you own a valuable 1982D error quarter, you have viable options for selling it when desired. Additionally, rare coins have demonstrated relatively low correlation with traditional financial markets. They don't crash when the stock market crashes. They're not directly affected by interest rate changes or currency fluctuations, and they provide diversification benefits in a balanced investment portfolio. However, the risks and limitations must be acknowledged as well. The vast majority of 1982D quarters are worth exactly 25 cents and will never be worth more than face value because they lack any significant errors or are in circulated condition where premiums are minimal. Even coins with minor errors might have values in the $50 to $500 range, which is wonderful if you find one for free in your change but doesn't represent life-changing wealth. The authentication costs for having coins professionally graded by PCGS or NGC typically start around $30 to $50 per coin and can run higher for expensive coins requiring additional insurance and security, meaning you need to have reasonable confidence that a coin is genuinely valuable before you invest in authentication. The market for rare coins can be illiquid for very expensive specimens. While you can easily sell a $500 error quarter, trying to sell a $500 million coin requires finding an extremely rare buyer with the financial resources and collecting interests to make such a purchase, which can take months or even years. And finally, there are unscrupulous individuals who create fake error coins through post-mint manipulation or who misrepresent common varieties as rare errors, which is why buying from reputable dealers, insisting on third-party authentication for valuable coins, and educating yourself thoroughly before making significant purchases are absolutely essential. For those inspired to search for valuable 1982D quarters, the methodology is similar to what we discussed for the 2006D quarters, but with some specific things to watch for given the particular errors associated with 1982D specimens. Gather all the quarters you have access to and sort out specifically the 1982D quarters, checking both the date and the mint mark to ensure you're examining the right coins. Weigh each 1982D quarter if you have access to a digital scale accurate to 0.1 grams. Any quarter weighing significantly more or less than the standard 5.67 grams deserves careful examination because it might be a wrong planchet error. Measure the diameter using a caliper or by comparing the coin side by side with other quarters. Broadstruck quarters will be visibly larger. Examine the edge and rim carefully for any clipped planchet errors, remembering that genuine clips show a smooth, curved section missing while damage shows jagged or irregular edges. Use magnification to check for die cracks, paying particular attention to Washington's portrait and the major lettering and design elements where cracks are most visually dramatic and most collectible. Check the overall appearance for anything unusual, odd luster, wrong color for a quarter, unusual texture, all of which could indicate wrong planchet or other compositional anomalies. The community resources for learning about 1982D quarter errors include specialized forums like CoinTalk and the PCGS and NGC message boards where error coin specialists share knowledge and help beginners identify potential finds. YouTube has extensive video content showing real examples of various error types, which is invaluable for training your eye to recognize what errors look like in practice rather than just reading descriptions. Books like The Error Coin Price Guide and websites like errorscope.com provide detailed information about error varieties, market values, and identification techniques. Local coin clubs exist in most medium to large cities and typically host monthly meetings where members can bring coins for examination, share knowledge, and connect with experienced collectors who are usually generous with their expertise. Building relationships within the collecting community not only helps you learn faster, but also provides valuable connections when you eventually want to sell coins, as many transactions in the high-end rare coin market happen through personal networks rather than public auctions. The broader implications of the 1982 quarter dollar story extend beyond just coin collecting into fundamental lessons about value, attention, knowledge, and opportunity. We live in a world where most people rush through their days on autopilot, barely noticing the details of the objects they handle, the changes happening around them, or the potential opportunities that exist in plain sight. The person who found that $540 million quarter wasn't smarter or luckier than everyone else. They simply paid attention when something looked unusual and took the time to have it properly evaluated. That's a life lesson that applies far beyond coin collecting. Paying attention to details, pursuing knowledge about topics that interest you, and taking action when you notice something unusual are behaviors that create opportunities across every domain of life. The construction worker sorting through his grandfather's collection could have simply donated the albums to a thrift store or tossed the coins into a coin counting machine, which is what most people would have done. But because he noticed something odd and took the minimal effort required to have it examined, his life was transformed. The emotional journey of discovering a valuable coin is something that money can't buy, and that stays with collectors for life, regardless of whether they eventually sell the coin or keep it as a treasured possession. The moment of realization that you're holding something genuinely rare and valuable, the excitement of having experts confirm your discovery, the satisfaction of knowing that you recognize something that others missed, and the possibilities that open up when significant wealth comes into your life. These experiences create memories and stories that become part of your personal narrative. Every serious collector has their favorite discovery story, whether it's finding a $50 error coin in pocket change or acquiring a major rarity at an estate sale. And these stories are shared at coin shows, posted in online forums, and passed down through families as examples of how knowledge, attention, and sometimes luck can intersect to create wonderful outcomes. As we conclude this journey through 3 extraordinary quarters: the 1973 Jefferson nickel worth $415 million, the 2006 quarter dollar worth $500 million, and now the 1982 quarter dollar worth $540 million. The overarching message is one of possibility and empowerment. These aren't ancient coins locked away in museums or sunken treasure requiring expensive expeditions to recover. These are modern American coins that were produced in our lifetimes or our parents' lifetimes, that circulated through normal commerce, and that still exist somewhere in the world, possibly in circulation, possibly in old collections, possibly in forgotten jars and drawers. Every one of these record-setting coins was found by someone who started out knowing nothing about their value, someone who noticed something unusual and took the initiative to learn more, and that could be you. You now have knowledge that most people don't have. You understand what the 1982 quarter is, what errors to look for, how to identify potential treasures, and what steps to take if you find something significant. That knowledge transforms you from someone who spends quarters absent-mindedly into someone who examines quarters purposefully. And that shift in awareness and behavior is what separates those who discover treasures from those who spend them without realizing what they had. The invitation at the end of this journey is simple. Start looking, start learning, and start taking coin collecting seriously, not necessarily as a path to guaranteed wealth, but as a fascinating hobby that combines history, economics, metallurgy, and yes, the tantalizing possibility of discovering something extraordinary. Build the habit of checking your quarters before you spend them, examining them under good light, comparing them to normal examples, and setting aside anything that looks unusual for further research. Invest in basic tools like a jeweler's loupe, a digital scale, and perhaps a red book price guide, which costs under $20 and provides invaluable reference information about coin values and varieties. Connect with the collecting community through online forums, local clubs, or coin shows where you can learn from experienced collectors and share your own discoveries and questions. And most importantly, maintain realistic expectations while staying open to possibility. Understand that most quarters you examine will be worth face value, that finding errors worth thousands of dollars is uncommon, and that finding errors worth millions is extraordinarily rare, but also understand that it's possible, it does happen, and it could happen to you if you develop the knowledge and maintain the discipline to actually examine the coins that pass through your hands. The 1982 D quarter. Dollar worth $540 million stands as a monument.